Part 1. The Road of No Return. Sky had no color left. It was as if someone had erased the blue, the gold, the red of dawn, left behind only a sickly gray, thick, sticky, almost alive. Aiden walked beneath that dead sky like someone moving through the inside of a starving beast. Every step echoed in a wasteland that once had been farmland, village, home. Now nothing was home. Nothing was farmland. Everything was rubble, smoke, and a silence too heavy to be silence at all, more like the air itself still holding the memory of old screams. He didn't know exactly when the war began. No one did. Some said it started with a border, others blamed a ruler, and some swore war had always existed, that it simply changed names, flags, and faces. But Aiden carried a different suspicion. Maybe the war had begun long before the first human walked the earth. Maybe it had been waiting, patient, hidden, until the human heart became vulnerable enough to welcome it like a seed. And now he was here, walking through the skeletons of houses, through the remains of lives that would never be reclaimed. The ground was a mosaic of ash and dried blood. Abandoned boots, shattered toys, scarves tied to poles that no longer had electricity. Even the crows seemed to have learned how to speak, such was their familiarity with the corpses left open beneath the wind. Aiden pulled his hood lower to shield himself from the cutting dust. He felt weak not from hunger, but from something deeper, a spiritual erosion, as though his soul was being eaten from the inside by invisible embers. He had seen too much, lost too much, and above all, heard too much whispers, cries, commands, explosions. But also the kind of sound no human should hear, the choked scream of a child gripping a rifle for the first time. The image stabbed his mind like a blade. The boy, far too small for the weight he carried, wide eyes too dry to produce tears. He held the rifle like someone holding a destiny he hadn't chosen. Aiden never learned his name. Maybe the boy had one, maybe not. To Aiden, he was the face of an entire generation warped by the madness of adult children taught to shoot before they ever learned to write. Aiden tried to teach him how to run, tried to convince him there was another path. But the boy had been shaped by the brutal urgency of those who commanded him. "If I don't do it, they'll do it to me," he whispered. And in that whisper, Aiden understood the size of the abyss the world had fallen into. War devoured the youngest first. It was always them. In the distance, Aiden saw a column of black smoke rising. It meant only two things. Either survivors were in desperate need of help, or looters were at work. He quickened his pace, but cautiously. He'd approached groups before, groups that looked human, but weren't anymore. War had a cruel way of tearing humanity out of people slowly at first, then all at once. When he reached the clearing, he realized it used to be a lively village. Now it was nothing but twisted wreckage. Even so, he sensed movement among the ruins. Aiden heard faint groans. He knelt beside a bloodied woman, half buried under a scorched beam. "Hey," he murmured, reaching for her hand. "I'm getting you out." Her eyes were wide not with fear, but with a kind of absolute exhaustion, like her soul had been torn into thin strips. "They," she gasped, blood leaking from her lips, "came with flags I've never seen. Said it was for the good of the nation, for the good of the future." Aiden didn't ask who they were, it didn't matter. All said the same thing. Missionaries of their own, wars delusional, marching like saviors while carrying the destruction they claimed to be fighting. He managed to lift the beam with effort, but when he pulled her free, something was wrong. The woman no longer breathed. Her eyes were fixed on the colorless sky. Aiden closed her eyelids with trembling fingers. Another life he reached too late. He spent hours searching through debris, gathering what little food remained, looking for anyone still alive, if safe place was even a thing that existed anymore. In the end, he found 3 body-ass teenagers wearing different uniforms. None had survived. None were older than 15. War had no sides, only victims. When the sun began to set, if the dull orange smear in the sky could still be called a sun, Aiden set up a small camp among the remains of the village. He found a somewhat sheltered corner and lit a small fire. The warmth stung his eyes not from smoke, but from the memories it brought. He remembered nights like this, sitting around fires with his companions early in the war, when they still believed they could make a difference. When they believed they could save someone. He remembered each of them. Their dreams, their reasons, their hopes. And he remembered how they vanished, one by one, taken by explosions, gunfire, disease, madness. Aiden carried their ghosts like parasites clinging to his mind, gnawing at what was left of his sanity. As he watched the flames crackle, the sounds of the broken world seemed to creep closer, far-off bombs. The metallic whistle of machines slicing through the night sky, distant cries fading into the dark. The world no longer slept, it only waited. Aiden raised his gaze toward the horizon. A dead line of land, split by smoke. And there suddenly he did something he hadn't done in years. He screamed. He screamed at the sky, at the men, at the dead, at the living, at anything that might hear him. WHY, his voice broke. How long? How long are we going to tear each other apart? How long will this madness devour children? How long will blood be the language we speak? His cry ricocheted across the wasteland. No answer, no echo, nothing. It was as if the world itself was too tired to reply. Exhausted, Aiden collapsed to his knees. Everything he'd seen, everything he'd lost, everything he'd failed, crashed down on him at once. In that moment, right at the edge of despair, something happened. Not a sound, not a voice from the sky, not an angel, spirit, or entity, but a feeling. A subtle shift, barely noticeable, rising from within him. As if his consciousness had been brushed by something newly awakened, something ancient. Something that had always been there, but had been buried under pain for too long. It was as if the silence itself had spoken. And that inner voice, strange and deep, whispered a sentence he never expected. The war is bigger than you, but its ending begins with someone. Aiden opened his eyes, breath unsteady, scanning the ruins around him. The world looked exactly the same. Nothing had changed, but he had. He closed his fist tightly. And there, standing among ruins, in a shattered world, in a silence that carried ancient wisdom, he made the only promise he had left. If the world was marching toward destruction, he would march the other way. End of part 1. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel and receive more videos like this.